Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to do this very fast in a TED Talk style, so I'm not going to dwell too much on the slides, and it's going to run very quickly. So anyway, Singapore, as you already know, is a really small place. I think many of you have come by, and I imposed the size of Singapore over Australia, and this is how big we are. There you go, the size of the little A in Australia. So I'm not too sure what we can really share, but I'll do my best, okay? So in the context of innovation, right, we take it at a whole of government approach. And we have a smart nation strategy ongoing where we look at developing access for citizens, creating a very startup-friendly ecosystem for companies, and also upskilling for people who are interested in digital skills. So as part of this, right, when we look at EMS innovation, it is actually building on these tiers. So the basic foundations include access to 5G, wireless, broadband, cybersecurity, biometrics, infrastructure, data lakes, data policies, AI, expertise. And then there's an agency which is integrated called GovTech, where there used to be 3 separate agencies doing policies, doing IT and media. And of course, there's also a framework for skills training for digital, digital skills, digital media, and Infocom. So, onwards to the Singapore Civil Defence Force. We are an ambulance service, a national ambulance service. There are 75 ambulances in Singapore. We cover the whole island, which is about 700 square kilometers. We have a 3-man crew, of which one is a military conscript, and he's a 19-year-old boy. And we have 1 firefighter who's an EMT, and an EMT intermediate. In our local context, we call them a paramedic, but they are, in American context, an EMT intermediate. Okay, so going back to Bernard's talk yesterday, I looked at 2050, and I had some talks on aging population, right? And this is what Singapore would look like in 2050. 47% of our population will be 65 and above if we don't change the trajectory of what we are doing. So it's pretty scary, you know. This was a talk I've done quite some time ago, and I re-looked at it and the numbers, and this is a UN projection, not mine. So if you look at it today, 42% of my calls, right, actually come from elderly, and they're only 13% of the population. So imagine what happens when they become 47% of the population. So the logical conclusion when you think of innovation, or even how we want to transform care, is this. It's time to throw out the old textbooks on EMS and get older textbooks, or geriatric ones. It's true. Why do you teach adult medicine, teach geriatric medicine as your basic physiology? And that probably is going to be the fact for all of us in EMS. So this is my call volumes, and essentially, right, it's pretty much the best stock market ever, right? So when you look at it, it's a 7.6% compounded annual increase from 1997. We've never had a recession year, sad to say. So I mean, when you look at these numbers, we had to do care transformation. Today, buying a single ambulance is about $1 million of operational costs a year to run it, including staff, equipment, and all the other fixtures, parking space, or what have you. So we've started moving in and using an integrated workforce with the fire department and using the firefighters. So for cardiac arrest cases, now we send up to 3 vehicles. And the reason is this. If you can see the little blue thing down there, right, that's my fire calls. You can see how steady they are, right? So fire calls have actually, in fact, been dropping. You can't even see it because it's such a small number. And because of that, we started cross-training firefighters to be EMT basics. We started cross-deploying all the fire appliances. Eventually, all of them will be included in the workforce, and we've even created special vehicles to keep them happy. So we've got a fire medical vehicle. So it's the front of a fire engine and the back of an ambulance. This is what happens when they get married, you see. So there you go. At the front, you have a pump. You carry water. At the back, you carry a patient. So our firefighters are quite happy. They're also involved. They transport our lower acuity patients, and it's a way for them to get socialized to the idea of doing cross deployment and working as an EMT. So I'll move on next about dispatch. So for those of you who did the GRA thing, I talked about dispatch being the secret sauce. And the important thing with dispatch is that for us, right, when we started collecting good data, we did 100% audit. We had a nice form. We got a lot of qualitative and quantitative information about what we were doing. We were not doing well. And once we started collecting this, we started playing back the tapes to the dispatchers, and we gave them very good near real-time feedback, let's say within a week of the call. So you can see that, even if you're not a statistician, it probably means something, right? You can see the numbers, really jump. So we just put in a quality assurance program, and the results were fairly startling for us. So we looked at the data for what we were doing, and what we found out was this. 20% of the patients had bystander CPR going on organically, meaning someone volunteered, went to do CPR. But what we found out was this. Actually, another about 10-12% of the people actually knew CPR, but they didn't dare to start. But if the dispatcher couldn't diagnose it over there, that was a missed opportunity. So the remaining numbers, beyond the 30% those were all telephone CPR, and those were, really guided people who didn't know CPR at all. So I think this was a very useful finding for us, which we published in Resuscitation a few years back. So in response to this, right, we actually created a very simplified program. We stole this from the Japanese, okay? I mean, they copy from everyone else, so it's time to get back at them, right? So we stole this idea where they run school programs. We call it the Dispatcher Assisted First Response Program. And the reason why we called it this was that our National Resuscitation Council didn't agree with hands-only CPR for quite a few years. And that was maybe in early 2012. So to get around them, we called it Dispatcher Assisted. So that allowed us to teach hands-only CPR to the school kids. There is some audio on this. If we could turn it up a little bit, perhaps. Do we have audio, Frank? Oh dear. It's a bit of a silent movie.
As you like, but for now, you should have DARE. Step 1, check for responsiveness. Are you okay? Step 2, call 995. Next, get someone to find you an AED. Step 3, check for breathing.
Step 4, chest compressions.
Place the heel of your palm in the center of the chest and press hard and fast. Excellent.
Attach defib pads to patient's clear chest.
Continue doing CPR and using the AED until the SCDF fire bike and ambulance arrive. So, it's up to you. Your hands can do truly great things. Next time, will you dare to help?
So this is just a quick shot. Thank you. Yeah. So this is just a short blurb for the DARE program. We make it very approachable for laypersons. We try to make it funny. Adrian Pang is actually a local comedian. And after doing the program for about a few years, we also did a little training app that people can use together to learn, sort of like the e-learning thing for the school kids. It's also useful for workplaces. It's only awareness, so there's no certification and testing. So the thing is, the idea was to turn it from a 4-hour certification program to a 40-minute program. And we're running it in schools today. This is one of my favorite pictures because the gentleman on the left is actually our Minister of Health, okay, and him doing the CPR. And I thought it was funny because you also had a Minister of God providing divine intervention. So, that's sure to work. And the key thing with the DARE program, and I thought the innovation for us in this was this. Previously, our Resuscitation Council, right, we don't focus very closely on agonal breathing. So this year, they finally decided to add that into the syllabus for all the training centers, yes, and we've stole it from Bondi Beach. Yeah. And we also did this modeling of what happens when you call 995. So that way, right, people see in the video, the learning video, what happens when you call 995, what would the dispatcher ask you about, breathing normally, about unconscious patients, and the address. So I think these were important things that, we realized people would freeze when they call 995. So we've adopted it nationally as a school program, so all the middle school kids would do it. Well, they start off at 11 years old, which is elementary school. They learn something about cardiac arrest and health education, and when they're 13, they start doing the chest compressions as the DARE program. Why 40 minutes is exactly the length of a class period in Singapore. Okay, so My Responder app, I think you've seen so much of Good Sam, you've seen the Western Australian St. John's app, so I wouldn't belabor too much about explaining what the My Responder app does.
At the same time,
I have a
there are
little
also apps
video
which
from a
alert you
news
if
clip.
there is someone in need of help nearby. The My Responder app alerts users if someone is having a cardiac arrest nearby. And the app user can respond to the call for help, and they'll be sent the location of where to go.
You can see the shared visibility
So far, the app has
where the
seen
lady is
800
moving to
people
the
who have
AED.
accepted such alerts. And one My Responder app user shared how he helped a 16-year-old teenager.
At night, I just came home from my work, so I was relaxing like right now on my sofa, and suddenly I received an alert from my phone, so I get to know the case. When I arrived on the scene, I saw one of the SCDF personnel is already performing the CPR on the boy. So I approached him, say that we can actually do the 2-man CPR.
My Responder app promotes community resilience, where you are virtually volunteering your time
I don't know who this guy
to
is.
be helpful to your community, so that you make your community safer. That really resonates with the whole SG Secure idea.
Yeah, so as, as you recognize, the guy who was talking was at his own house, and because we live in high-rise, right, the 400 radius, right, when someone is a responder, would cover 500 families in the same block. So when you live high-rise and you have a few people who have the app, they're at home, it's pretty effective. And for us, the app allows you to go inside the houses as well. So high-rise building, high-rise living, and My Responder or Good Sam type of apps, it works fairly well in that setting because of the high density. So we've got 15 people, 15 survivors so far, survivor to discharge, and we've got quite good numbers over 4 years. The numbers are growing. We have about 45,000 responders so far. So we've done a few things with innovating further. We've done this idea with a taxi company where we basically had a foundation provide the AEDs, another foundation provided CPR training. We customized the app so it looks really kind of like Uber, right? You know, if any of you are Uber drivers, this is what it kind of looks like. You can turn on to say you're ready to take a Uber customer, and then you have a 2-kilometer radius to respond. So this whole idea about shared visibility, right? I look at it in the future, perhaps, you know, even an idea that someone could use the Good Sam to call, and you as a Good Sam caller for help could see a responder coming towards you. You could text them and guide them, just like how Uber, you could tell the driver that he's going in the wrong direction. So why couldn't you add this type of visibility such that you could see the ambulance and tell the ambulance crew, hey, I think you're not in the right lane. And I think these are things that potentially are very simple wins if you're starting to do Good Sam, your Western Australian app. And maybe it's something everyone can think about. We haven't done it, by the way, because our ambulance service is a little concerned that, hey, what if someone says that your ambulance are coming too slow and things like that. So we are still discussing those ideas about whether we could implement that in the next phase. So a little blurb about EMS training. So we've actually done an integrated fire medical training center. Again, we steal ideas. So this is actually a visit to White Island in Queensland Ambulance Service. I'd like to say thanks to them. Many years ago, I visited this place called White Island when I visited Queensland Ambulance Service. They had a very nice scenario training place, and I got an idea about how we could do better customized integrated training programs with scenarios, handing over at the ER, handing over or like having a scene of a typical house, road traffic accident. So we're building all this in our soon to be built up National EMS Training Center. So it's a very nice scenario thing. And of course, nowadays, it being what it is, we are starting to experiment with VR, AR as part of the training methodologies. And this is from a nice lab locally.
It was in the early days.
Yeah, so we can really play around with the iPad or the actual.
So this is from the Nanyang Technological University. It's a media lab where they can do a lot of multimedia visualization. So augmented reality can be pretty nice for teaching physiology, and you can see the pulsating heart and even blood flows. I think I'm not sure if that will show up. There you go. So you can do a lot of very visual type of learning for people. Okay, so I'm going to move on to data. I'm running out of time. So I'm going to share a little bit about geospatial data. We've been doing this for quite a long time in terms of dealing with traffic situation. Peak hours are bad especially. So we've actually looked at redeploying the ambulances. In the old days, right, we only used fire stations, and this was where we could get to patients within 11 minutes. So we redistributed ambulances without actually adding more ambulance to the fleet, and then the coverage, of course, improved. So with some of these, right, and this was done almost 15 years ago with Marcus Ong, and we've actually cut down the response time just redeploying to fire post. And of course, we've been doing this work about modeling when, what you need to optimize your system. So we've looked also at locations of AEDs, to improve how we place AEDs. We looked at where the cardiac arrests are, as well as where the public access defibrillators were. So we found, of course, from the registry that 70% of our cardiac arrest was in housing area. And very often, right, most places do not have residential AED programs. And this is from Denmark, where they already have some, but you can see the ratios of residential versus housing AEDs. Most of it are actually versus public AEDs. Most of AEDs are in the public areas. So for us, because of the way we live, we actually started a program of residential AEDs, and we started placing them every other block. So this is still a trial. We've put 5,000 AEDs that cover 3 million citizens, and we've just installed in March this year. And this was the first one that we installed. And now we're seeing through many different efforts, not just the program, we are starting to see some, we are reaping some rewards of the app because of the telephone CPR and other programs. And and right now we have more residential AEDs compared to public AEDs. And we think that this is probably the right ratio, at least for us. Okay. So we also have a digital twin program as part digital twin program, or the Virtual Singapore project. So this is actually a larger effort on the governmental level where you map, they scan the entire country, and we are using it to feed in live data sensors so that we can use it to model where to place AEDs, whether it's easy enough to get to the AEDs and the optimal timings. And we're also using it to model mass casualty evacuations during exercises. So there's a lot of things you can do with the digital twin project. So it's a virtual Singapore where you can model all types of simulations for ambulance response and other things. Yeah, so I'm going to finish off shortly with about 2 minutes. We've already started at the dispatch center being able to access the National Electronic Health Records System. So we have a national digital identity where if you can get the information from the caller, we could actually find out drug allergies, pre-existing conditions, which we tell the paramedics. But of course, that's just the start. We still have a lot of problems with data flow. So this is the next phase project that's coming out next year. Yeah, so for those of you who are EM physicians, right, I get this comment most from Singapore EM physicians, oh my God, I can print the stickers before the patient arrives. I don't know if that's a thing for you guys. Yeah, but so the other thing associated with this project is that we are doing mobile biometrics, so the tablets will also come with biometric capability. And the idea is this: if you have a John Doe, the paramedics can scan the person on the go. It goes to immigration. Immigration finds the name and the patient's identifier. It goes to the National Electronic Health Record System, and then we bring the information back on the tablet. So you can treat before the patient hits the hospital. So biometrics. So that's something that's also integrated as the project. So my last slide, I'm overrunning by a minute or so. I'm so sorry, Freddie. I'm really sorry. Yeah. So we're also looking at artificial intelligence to help us look at reducing cognitive overload for our staff. So this, of course, will start in dispatch. So with this, hello 995 Operations Center. What is your emergency? Yeah, so with this, right, we are actually doing this in 4 languages, and then you don't need pre-training to train the machine to your voice. So this is the ongoing project where we are trying to do the ability to read and record languages in 4 major national languages. So that way it supports textual mining. We can use it to do automated protocol compliance at the call center for 100% of the calls. So we're retrospectively running through about 1 or 2 years of calls right now, and we may extend 10 years backwards to see what we've been doing. I'm sure we'll be shocked. And lastly, this is my very last slide. We're also looking at collaborating with Corti, which has an amazing project with detecting cardiac arrest, but we are also looking at trying to see whether we can develop some ideas with using the AI to triage and match the patient acuity to what the paramedics say and what the ER says. So this is still ongoing work, early phase. We're doing it right now. Hopefully we can publish in a couple of years, but I think we are very sure that the speech-to-text mining will work. But of course, the AI part of whether we can get good triage will be challenging. So this is all I have to share. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, just email me or look me up on LinkedIn. Thank you.